Welcome, guys, to the Top 10 After Show. Um, just as always, it's great to have you here. This week, we're going to be doing something somewhat like what the guys did, something a little different. Now, they did the best superhero movies. We decided, with Fantastic Four coming out, having not done the best superhero movies yet, we decided to change it a little bit and do the best Marvel movies. Now, that doesn't just mean the MCU movies, but that means any Marvel character. So, with that being said, let me introduce my co-host for the day. Dan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I am Dan Skipbound. I'm the host of the Profiles After Show, and I'm all over Schmoville and social media. So glad to be back this week again. Hopefully, we're going to keep this up. It's going to be a great show every week.
Absolutely. And I'm Dylan Esposito. I don't think actually I've introduced myself yet. I think I've done it at the end. I don't think I've actually introduced myself. So with that being said, I'm Dylan Esposito. Great to have you here. Breakdown of the show real quick, just like Matt Knost and John Rocha do. It's going to be, we run down our top 10 lists. Now, as we said, this one's going to be Marvel. So we'll go 10, 9, 8. And then I'll do my 10, 9, 8. Dan will do his 7, 6. I'll do my 7, 6. And then we rattle them off one by one until we get our top 10s out there. We discuss the films. And then at the very end, we're going to create one giant top 10 list. Fight it out. So far, we've been pretty good, Dan, but we'll see how this goes. So let's go ahead and start you off. What's your 10, 9, and 8?
A lot of folks are going to be probably on me about this, but I feel like the director's cut counts in a movie. You know, like recently we had the road cut of X-Men Days of Future Past. Well, a while ago we had what was called the director's cut of Daredevil. And if you watch the director's cut of Daredevil, that's a damn good movie. I know there's some nitpicking that people have in that movie, but I think all the actors cast in it, Colin Farrell, Michael Clark Duncan, God rest his soul, Jennifer Garner, and specifically I really liked Ben Affleck as Daredevil, and also Foggy Nelson, Jon Favreau as Foggy Nelson. I really enjoyed Daredevil. You know, I think it's one of the top 10 Marvel characters movies easily. I mean, you could nitpick and put a second Spider-Man or a third Spider-Man on there, or another X-Men on there, but I like to try to get a different character in there instead of do the same ones over and over again. So I put Daredevil as number 10. And I got number 9, I got Iron Man. I think that's the very first Marvel MCU movie. I think that kicked us off for the whole thing that we got. Now we're on to phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when I first saw the trailer, I was like, wow, they hit the nail on the head with the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark / Iron Man. I couldn't imagine somebody else playing Iron Man and Tony Stark now. And that movie was fantastic. The post-credit scene, of course, Sam Jackson. We need to talk about the Avengers Initiative. Love that post-credit scene. And then I got Avengers Age of Ultron, the sequel to Avengers, at number 8. I really like this movie. I think I might like it a lot more than most people like it, but I really love the development of the characters, especially the villain Ultron. They really gave him some life with James Spader, and the vision by Paul Bettany. Wow. You hear Paul Bettany as the voice of Jarvis, but then for him to turn into the Vision, if you haven't seen Age of Ultron by now, heck with you. There's no spoilers here. And then, Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen, Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Once again, I thought the development of those characters were really, really good. They obviously went back to Cap, Iron Man, and all the other characters. Hawkeye, what a great change from the first Avengers movie to this Avengers movie. It really, Joss Whedon and the writers really give him a lot more to do in Avengers Age of Ultron. So That's my number 8.
Well, I can already tell that we're gonna be a little bit different now. Two of those I don't have on mine. I don't have Age of Ultron just because I couldn't find a place for it. But I'm completely with you. I think it gets a lot more hate than it really should. I think it almost became kind of like popular to hate on it, and talking about the whole Daredevil with the director's cut. I think once or if we see a Joss Whedon director's cut, it'll be one of the best of all time. Um, I definitely don't have Daredevil on there, so we'll argue that a little bit later. Um, but my number 10, we'll go ahead and start there. My number 10 is actually, I did want to go different, just like you. I wanted to try and figure out something that was just as good as something else. So I wasn't just putting it on the list just because, and I went with Blade 2 as my number 10. Directed by, as JT likes to say, Guillermo del Toro. Willie the Bull. Had a great team. You got the good guy team, which is Wesley Snipes, obviously, is Blade. Chris Christopherson is Whistler. He comes back. Some character known as Norman Reedus was also on that team. Very, very young Norman Reedus. And they have to join up. It's this crazy story where it's basically the good side and the bad side from the first film have to join up to defeat this bigger evil that kills everything. And it was completely different story. I didn't expect anything from it. Just kind of checking it out, and it was one of those where it wasn't on the list for sure. Rewatching some of these to prepare for this, it snuck in there for me. It's just a fantastic film. My number 9 is going to go to X-Men First Class. I love what Matthew Vaughn did with it, with this younger class coming in. You had obviously James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. The young Professor X, the young Magneto, and they couldn't have cast that any better for those. Even this was one of those where Kevin Bacon showed his acting chops. He was a great villain. And he was a fun villain. It wasn't this it wasn't over the top like Valentine and Matthew Vaughn's Kingsman, but it definitely wasn't this reserved villain. And it was a great story. Showed us a young Hank, which we hadn't got to see in the other X-Men, and that's why it snuck on there for me. Then my number 8, which I know a lot of people are gonna have higher. I love some of the other films more. It's gonna be the X-Men Days of Future Past. So it's I got number 9 as First Class. The very next film snuck in there at 8, and I think I loved what they did with the timeline of it. I loved what Bryan Singer coming back into the franchise, Simon Kinberg writing it, and just this play back and forth. It was beautifully edited, great visuals. It even got nominated for an Oscar for that, which I didn't realize until researching it. It was just a fantastic film. When you take these, it could have been just one of those just toss-aways of just another bad superhero film where it just doesn't quite work. For me, it worked perfectly, especially because Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out right around then, and it made it look even better. So Dan, what do you have as your 7 and 6?
Well, you just mentioned my number 7 is X-Men Days of Future Past. I don't think you're going to have a movie list about the Marvel movie characters in Marvel movies without putting that movie on your list. That movie is just a phenomenal piece of filmmaking by Bryan Singer. I mean, just the story, even the Rogue cut, yeah, 10 minutes because of Rogue or whatever. And I understand why they took her out. She would have really kind of dragged the film down at the beginning. But the cast is just amazing. I mean, Bryan Singer he just has some magic with these characters, and he knows what to do in this world. And just to let you know, I didn't have X-Men First Class on my list. I had it in my honorable mentions. So I do love that film.
So what's your
My number 6 is Ant-Man. And I absolutely love Ant-Man. I thought this movie was fantastic. I mean, to come up with a really obscure character in Marvel Cinematic Universe and that make it entertaining and make it fun, yet you have this spy move, this what's it called? What am I trying to get? This robber. Oh God, I know.
Film.
Oh, man, I can't think of what I want to say. But it's a mix between a like the inner space movies, the shrinking movies, and then the robbing movies. The oh God,
Like sci-fi meets
heist movie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, and they just meld those two genres, even though they're kind of. I guess there's a lot of heist movies out there. It's not a lot of shrinking movies. This is like 3 or 4 shrinking movies. So, but I really liked what they did putting those two together, and it's a heartwarming story about a father trying to do right and try to show his daughter that he's a good father and so forth. And that's what comes out in the end of Ant-Man. Plus, you got the connections with the MCU with Falcon and some of the post-credit scenes and stuff like that. So I'm really interested to see what they do with Ant-Man and Captain America, the Civil War. So yeah, those are my 7 and 6.
All right. Well, it seems like it started off like we were going to be very different. Obviously, we're not going to be that different since your 7 and 6 are my 8 and 7. My number 7 is Ant-Man as well. So for me, Ant-Man, I completely agree. What Peyton Reed did with that, especially coming in, talking about the whole, if we had Edgar Wright, and then Peyton Reed completely blew it out of the water. And even the rewrites from Adam McKay, Paul Rudd, I completely agree. It worked perfectly, and it brought the MCU back down to a smaller level, which, we had gotten so big with, even Guardians of the Galaxy, with the Avengers, with all this. And even though it was, if we don't do this, the world is going to end, it still didn't feel like that. It still felt like the stakes were, the main one was his daughter, like you had said. And with Bobby Carnival, in that could have completely been a throwaway character. It could have been the jerk boyfriend. And even the scene at the end, where she's feeding the ant and stuff. And it's just, they all come together. I completely agree with everything you said. My number 6 is going to be Spider-Man 2. Not the Amazing Spider-Man 2, just so we're clear. The one with, Tobey Maguire. You got Alfred Molina in there as Doc Ock. And just if you want reason why it should be on the list, look at that train scene. That train scene is fantastic, and where you're first breaking into the bank. Granted, some of the things with James Franco's play and stuff like that wasn't the best, but I could deal with it because of how great Tobey Maguire was in the role. Another thing that kind of pushed it over the edge for me was, hey, I'm a pretty big gamer, and Spider-Man 2 on GameCube was awesome. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. So that's going to be my number 6. Let's jump back to you, Dan. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is, and I know there's a good chance you might have this lower on your list. I mean, higher on your list, because a lot of people love this movie, and I loved it too. But I just felt like I had a few other movies that meant more to me. So I put Captain America: The Winter Soldier at number 5. I'm a big fan of like espionage kind of, like one guy against the government, these kind of movies. And, I watched 3 Days of the Condor with Robert Redford just last week, because I thought we're preparing for a spy. We're going to do a spy top 10. So I wanted to watch some spy movies. And this really has a lot similar plot and storyline to a spy thriller. And of course, who the villain is, Robert Redford. And then I love the scene with Toby Jones, he's playing his character from the original Captain America, where he's on the computer. And I love they have to go through all the stuff, and they find him in this like dungeon down this bunker that was like a World War II bunker and stuff. And then of course we got introduced to Anthony Mackie's the Falcon, and it's a real. I mean, it's more like the second tier of the Avengers in a lot of ways. You had like Nick Fury, Black Widow, Falcon, Captain America. So you had, and they were going against Sebastian Stan's Winter Soldier, which I think he's one of the better villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, I know Marvel has gotten a lot of flack about their villains, but I think Winter Soldier was a damn good villain. I mean, he held his own in this movie, and from what we hear, he's going to be playing a part in Captain America: Civil War. So, yeah, I had Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Yeah, see, and I have it. I have it quite a bit higher. I'll discuss that, like I said, when I get there. So this might get a little interesting for our list. With that, my number 5 was actually one that you had quite a bit lower, and that's Iron Man. I absolutely love that film. I walked into it not expecting anything. At that point, it was still just, oh yeah, it's kind of like the Fantastic Four kind of thing, right? And it completely changed the game, obviously. And it built this whole MCU that we love, or that some people love. It even had, I think, a pretty good villain, and you got Jeff Bridges in there. I love him as a villain. Then you got, the introduction to S.H.I.E.L.D., the introduction to Agent Coulson. Obviously, like you had mentioned, the end credit scene. There's just so many great things in there. And even he was only there for the one picture, but Terrence Howard was great as Rhodey. And obviously Jon Favreau, what he did with that was it was amazing. But with that, you know what? I'll go ahead and jump up to my number 4, and then we'll switch to you, kind of play it off. My number 4 is going to be X2. I love that film. I just rewatched it, and it wasn't even for the Marvel. I'd watched it maybe about a week and a half ago. It was on the paid channels, turned it on, and I forgot just how good of a movie it is. You got, what Professor X has to go through. You got the revelations into Wolverine's past. You get deeper into there, and you got Brian Cox as Stryker. That scene where they're first coming into the house and they're taking the kids it's terrifying, and it's awesome. And you see the play even more, I guess, developed between the good and the bad. With you got Aaron Stanford as Pyro, you got as Iceman, and it's just that split. Pyro thinks that this is the only way. This is the only way to go, is through the good side, through Professor X, and Magneto kind of just lets him know, hey, that's not the only way. And sure enough, he turns. Kelly Hu as Lady Deathstrike, I love. When she first comes out with those 10 claws on her nails, and you see Wolverine's face, and just, oh shit, it's fantastic. So with that, what's your number 4?
Actually, it's identical to your number 4, X-Men 2, X-Men United. I mean, it is such a great movie. I mean, what kind of movie you're going to get when you watch the very beginning of the movie, and it's got this amazing scene, and the Nightcrawler scene at the White House was just phenomenal. I mean, it reminds me of the scene with Quicksilver in the kitchen or whatever in the White House in the X-Men Days of Future Past. Those are just like jaw-dropping scenes. It's like, wow, they really captured the essence of these characters, Nightcrawler and Quicksilver, in the 2 different movies. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I really, really enjoyed X-Men 2. Bryan Singer topped himself from X-Men, and he definitely made a better movie. X-Men 2 was definitely a better movie than X-Men, even though X-Men was a good movie. course,
Yeah,
we talk
yeah,
about
absolutely.
three.
And that's coming out of X-Men, I absolutely loved it. But this completely changed, and it took a more serious tone. It wasn't like the MCU films. It was a very serious movie, and it played on a lot of things. Even from changing at one point killing off all the mutants to Magneto trying to kill off all the humans and use their own plan against them. It was a brilliant, brilliant job by Bryan Singer. Um, what's your number three, Dan?
I have one that you already mentioned, Spider-Man 2. You hit the nail on the head with the train scene with Alfred Molina. I mean, I a lot of people didn't. I know a lot of people probably don't know who Alfred Molina is, and before or after that, I mean, he kind of does a lot of indie movies and stuff like that. But the guy is a fantastic Oscar caliber type actor. He is a so to see him play Doc Ock and really not kind of like phone it in. He really plays the character the way the character is supposed to be played. And that train scene, like you said, is just phenomenal. Spider-Man 2 was really, really good. I mean, when you have Spider-Man, you have X-Men, and then they make sequels, and the sequels are better than the original. Rarely do we have that. Maybe with The Godfather 2 and Empire Strikes Back, but Spider-Man 2 was a just terrific, terrific movie. Once again, we will not bring up Spider-Man 3. Oh God! But yeah,
Oh,
Spider-Man 2 at number
yeah.
number 3.
Yeah, my number three. I got a feeling it's going to be your number two based on our list. I sure hope it is. If not, we're going to have a pretty big fight. My number three is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. I love that film. What James Gunn did with it, it's fantastic. And you got all these different characters. Had I not known Bradley Cooper was playing Rocket, if I just listened to that voice, I would have never said Bradley Cooper. It's just a slight change in his voice, but it's so much that you don't hear Bradley Cooper. Vin Diesel saying 5 words in the entire movie. He's never been better. Dave Bautista, there's not very many wrestlers that can say they blew a performance out of the water. And I loved his very literal, this, and it just worked. This extremely dry, not even trying to be humor, but humor. And then you got, Zoe Saldana as Gamora, the play between her and Karen Gillan as Nebula. And then, of course, you get to finally see Thanos. Granted, what they did with Ronan, I wish they would have done a little bit more or developed a little bit more. But because it was just so fun. I've never had more fun, and that soundtrack, you'll be hard to find a better soundtrack of music from any movie. I love that. So yeah, what do you have as your number two? It
Well,
better be
it's not Guardians of the Galaxy because I'm going to spoil it for our viewers if anybody's watching. I have Guardians of the Galaxy at number 1.
okay.
And Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And obviously, with what you said, having Guardians of the Galaxy at number 2, that means Avengers is probably your number 1. And I had Avengers at number 2. So we both swapped our number 1 and our number 2 more than likely, even though you haven't said yours yet. But yeah, I had Guardians at number 1. I'm right there with you. All the reasons that you said. I just thought, in my opinion, it was more of a space star-spanning, galaxy-spanning movie for a little independent director like James Gunn. I thought he really captured what a Marvel cinematic movie could be and can be in the future with all these characters that not a lot of people knew about. I, on the other hand, didn't know all of these characters because I had read comics years ago. I do not read comics anymore. Well, my brother lends me some stuff every once in a while. He's actually writing a book about the Guardians of the Galaxy. That'll be out later this year, or I think later next year. That's what I'm. But yeah, I had Guardians at number 1, and I just maybe I like it more than you like it, or it's just kind of like nitpicking that I had it at 1 and you had it at 2 or whatever, and I have Avengers at 2.
I have it at 3.
You have you have it at 3.
I have it at 3.
What do you have at 3?
Guardians.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I have. All right. Well, I had it at 1.
Yeah. It's all right. I mean,
we talked about it. I figured I might as well just bring it up now.
Yeah, no. That's perfect. I mean, that's just like Rocha and Knost do. Sometimes they'll have the discussion, sometimes they'll have it then. So
yeah, well, I have Avengers at 2, and I know once you bring up Avengers, we can both discuss Avengers. So here we go. I already let the cat out of the bag. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I might as well go ahead and say my number 2, and then we'll discuss your number 2, my number 1. My number 2 is going to be one that you mentioned at 5. It's going to be Captain America: Winter Soldier. I love what they did. That chase scene with Sam Jackson, the hand-to-hand combat between Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan. It's amazing what they did with it, and not just one hand-to-hand combat scene. You got one in the street, and then you also have one on the helicarrier. And you see just how terrifying Sebastian Stan can be when he's just sitting there in the dark, and he comes in and just it's so creepy. He's just sitting there, and you just see his eyes from here, and then the way that they slowly revealed who it was. Now, if you knew the comics like I did, yes, you knew who it was, but I was sitting there with a group of people who I thought all knew who it was, and their mouths dropped as soon as they saw it, and they were like, "Oh, is that Bucky? That's his best friend, right?" And I was cracking up almost at it just because of their reactions, of how surprised they were, and such a genuine reaction to it. And then obviously, the introduction with Falcon, and I thought the most brilliant thing was the way that they brought back Hydra, because in the first one, it's this basically exact same thing as the Nazis, a branch of the Nazis. So you almost think, all right, well, how could that work in this day and age? And the way that they do it, that they've been building up inside Shield since the beginning, and almost because of Shield's mistakes setting up and recruiting these people, and that's why it sneaks in at my number 2. So we'll go to your number 2. My number 1, I'll let you talk first. The Avengers. What makes it your number 2 movie?
Yeah, I mean, I love the Avengers. I mean, it was such a long wait to finally get to the Avengers through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and to see what they did, it's just the bantering back and forth of a superhero team, to see Thor and Iron Man and Captain America and the Hulk all in one movie together, and Loki is the villain, just like Avengers 1 way back 30, 40 years ago, however long it was, in the 60s or whatever. That was identical to what the Avengers comic book was. It had Loki as the villain, and he kind of did a little bit of taking over somebody, and he didn't. I think in the movie, I don't think he took over the Hulk, but in the comic, he took over the Hulk a little bit, and he was just such a nasty, nasty character. But Tom Hiddleston, I mean, I think a lot of people agree that Tom Hiddleston still is the best Marvel cinematic villain we've seen so far. I'm hoping Thanos in 2 movies gets to live up to Loki. We've seen him in Thor. We've seen him in Avengers. So we've seen him a little bit in Thor 2, The Dark World. So I think right now definitely Loki's in the lead for best villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I really thought every one of the characters had something to do. Of course, like I mentioned before, Hawkeye got mind melded or whatever you want to call it. He wasn't in the movie that much, but everybody else were fantastic. I thought that was a really great first outing by Joss Whedon and Kevin Feige and the Marvel people at Disney.
Yeah, and I completely agree. That's why it made it up there for my number 1, because it was nothing like I had seen before. I'd mentioned it on maybe a couple other things or just talking to friends, but it's actually the thing that made me realize I had a passion for movies. It was what made me want to talk about movies. I'd always loved movies, always done, watch a ton of movies, watch movies over and over and over again. but I never wanted to talk about them really, not with anybody, until I saw this movie, and it completely broke open that passion for me. That's why it's my number one, uh, because yeah, it was like nothing I had seen before, um, and just like Guardians, it was just so fun. While still being a pretty serious movie, you never lost the amount of stakes that the world was on the line. That even from the Battle of New York, that New York would be destroyed at least, even if you did save the world. Um, and the way that they, talked about their battle plan to keep them within a certain area, keep them busy, while they figured out how to close a portal. Thor using his lightning to protect, keep them out so they can take care of the ones that are already in there, and just um, I can't really add much more than what you had already said too. And there's so many memorable moments, and so many different small moments that become memorable. And being in a theater and thinking, being around people, seeing that purple man turn around and having everybody in the audience go, "Oh, who's that?" And then having explained to everyone exactly who that was and what the stakes were to come. And it really, you had Iron Man. Thor it's in my honorable mentions, trying to make it up there. Then you had Cap, the Incredible Hulk. Other than Iron Man, the other ones were okay. They were good. Nothing to complain about. They were solid films. And then the Avengers just knocked it out of the park, especially when it needed it. So that's going to be our 10 and 10. Now we get to the fun part on discussing and seeing. So we have quite a few in common. X2, I think, is the only one that we have exactly in the same place. So you want to lock that down at 4?
Yeah, that's fine with me. And I was thinking, since I have Avengers at 2 and you have it at 1, we could just put it at 1, and we could probably put, since you have Guardians at 3 and I have Guardians at 1, we put Guardians at 2 if you're cool with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then Captain America, I have it at 5 and you have it at 2. So 3 would be a good place for that, right?
Yeah, we can do that. We'll do Cap.
So we got Avengers, Guardians, Cap, Winter Soldier, and X-Men 2, X-Men United. So now you had
Spider-Man 2 at 5.
And I had it at
3.
3. So we can knock that right where you have it at 5. So that's the hardest part. We've already taken care of the hardest part: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. And then I'll tell you what, I'll give you Ant-Man and Days of Future Past at 6 and 7 if you give me Iron Man at 8.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I know I'm going to lose Daredevil. I don't have a problem with losing Daredevil because I know you don't have that on your list. So we knock off Daredevil. Then do you not have Age of Ultron at all?
I don't. I have it in my honorable mentions, but I don't have it at all.
Okay. What else do you have that I don't have besides Age of Ultron and Daredevil?
I have First Class and Blade 2.
Okay.
So
we're all set, right? We're all set up to 7. And you wanted, what did you want at 8?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you Ultron at 9 if you give me First Class at 10.
I can agree to that. And so we both lose 1. I lose Daredevil and you lose Blade.
Yeah. So we both lose our 10.
Yeah. That's fine. I knew we weren't going to have every one in common, but I knew most of what we had are going to be in common. And you with your knowledge of movies and my knowledge of movies, we weren't going to have a bunch of baloney things on there. I mean, my honorable mentions are Spider-Man, X-Men First Class, Thor, X-Men, Blade, Punisher, Warzone. So, I mean, pretty much
that's Yeah, I mean that's pretty much mine. My honorable mentions are Thor, X-Men, Spider-Man, Punisher, Warzone, and I did throw the Wolverine on there. Now the third act lost it for me, but I love that the first two acts of that film, especially on the train. I mean that is
Yeah,
straight out of the comics. It was awesome. It was great to see on film. But
no,
yeah,
yeah,
if
I
they could
put
have
that
left
all
that
out there.
third act out of there, that would have been a whole lot better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people were pissing and moaning about the third act of that film. But you're right. Wolverine. I like the Wolverine a lot better. Of course, way better than X Men. X Men Origins Wolverine. Gavin Hood has come out and said that they kind of hijacked that film from him.
Yeah,
Anyway, whole,
that's and we. You know what? I'm not even gonna. That doesn't deserve to be mentioned on this list.
no, no.
So
But
yeah, let me go ahead and I'll announce our top 10 Marvel movies.
all right.
At number 10, X-Men First Class. At number 9, Avengers Age of Ultron. At number 8, Iron Man. At number 7, Days of Future Past. Number 6, Ant-Man. At number 5, Spider-Man 2. Number 4, X2, X-Men United. At number 3, Captain America, The Winter Soldier. At number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy. And our number 1 Marvel movie, The Avengers. So there you go. That wraps it up.
Well, the thing is, with both of us having a lot in common as far as our likes of movies, it wasn't going to be that hard, in my opinion, to make up a list. And we were really close on a lot of these, like one spot apart. So it was easy to just say, okay, let's put this at 6 or that at 3 or whatever, and just move it up and jockey them around a little bit to make it fit. And I had Daredevil and you had Blade that got knocked off our list, but pretty much we got everything we wanted. I mean, we don't have to do that arguing every week like Matt and John do.
Oh, I know. Yeah, sometimes they get real into it, but I think that's because they have we're such alike in most of our movies. I can tell. Whereas they have some very different ones on some things, and other ones are completely close. Ooh, hold on. There we go. Sorry, I lost it for a second. All right, so that's going to complete our top 10, the top 10 after show for Marvel movies. Dan, why don't you go ahead and tell the people where they can find you at?
You can always find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. I do another show, like I mentioned before, the Profiles After Show, where you can find me talking about all kinds of movie goodness. I also do another show. I haven't done it in a few weeks. There's a good chance we're going to be changing our format and doing things in the studio. The Best Damn Movie Show with my co-host, Vinny LaSpada, and of course, Schmoville and Facebook and all these different good places. You can always find me. If you want to be on the Profiles After Show, all you got to do is message me. 2 criteria. You got to love movies, and you got to be careful about what you say because we want everybody to have their say.
Yeah, absolutely. And same thing goes for the top 10 after show for anyone watching. If you do want to do it, just go ahead and shoot me or Dan a message. We'll run you through just a quick little hangout just to make sure that we don't want to just have anyone on there just so they they can come troll us or something. But yeah, if you are really interested, you do know your movies, go ahead and message us. Don't be afraid to. You can find me at DylanE55 on Facebook, Twitter. You can find me on the Schmoville page. I'm an admin there. I run the box office breakdown page. I run the top 10 page. Please do go like both of those. Go like the top 10. Do go follow John Rocha at The Rocha Says and Matt Knost at Matt Knost. And make sure to give them some love because they're the reason that we're doing this. We love their format. We love what they're doing. And they've encouraged us to do it. So here we are. If you want to join, like I said, go ahead and message one of us. And do thank the Schmoes also for giving them the chance, which gave us a chance. So with that being said, that will conclude the top 10 after show of Marvel movies. Join us next week. Dan, I think we're going to have something pretty good and pretty different. I believe we're going to be doing spy movies. If you're more than interested, if you have a love for spy movies, like we said, go ahead and let us know. And make sure to comment your top 10 Marvel movies. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.